Right, good evening everybody. It's 6 o'clock. Thank you for all being so prompt, but we can start now. Before I start the meeting, I just need to make an announcement about webcasting. The meetings are now webcast. It's a fixed camera. It's not roaming round. So you're unlikely to be inadvertently caught on it. But if you are, it's taken that you accept that. But please let us know if that's a problem for you. It does also mean that, particularly my colleagues, can I ask you to remember to use the microphones when you speak, because anyone viewing the webcast would have to be a very proficient lip reader if you don't. Have I covered all the major points of the... Thank you. Okay, so we'll start the meeting, and we start with the minutes. Can I approve the records? Thank you. Right, there are no urgent decisions to report. And that brings us to public question time. We've got, I believe, 11 questions and a number of questions present, so we'll go through them in order, if that's all right. Do you want to go through them, Mr. Valley?
Yes, Chair, thank you. The first question is from a questioner who's not present. So we'll move on to the second question, which is from Mrs. Ruan. And the question is, land at Blackberry Lane, the committee is asked to take consideration all the objections that were made to the loss of the open space / country park land. This is the obvious time and place to consider the question of compensation to the public, which was discussed at the meeting on the 6th of December 2013, which was held at Fred Perry House. Attendees included the Chair of Friends of Reddish Vale, Pam Jones, Andy Kippax, Director of Public Health, Steve Watkins, a representative of the Stockport Green Space, Ian Walmsley, and me. So the question is, in considering the grounds for objection, what compensation measures have been discussed, and how soon will they be offered to the Friends Group for approval?
Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. Officers have been speaking to the Friends of Reddish Vale about this. The priority that they suggested was replacement toilets for the visitor centre. The initial estimate of the cost for those toilets is between £60,000 and £70,000, and at the moment officers are working to firm up those costs and to get plans drawn up to put those in. We are looking to bring funding forward to get those installed as soon as we can. The way it would normally work is that money would come into the council to be passed on to the Friends Group to do this work as the houses are built and sold. But obviously that is going to take a while, and we're keen, if we can, although we can't guarantee, we are keen to front fund that money and to find ways to bring it forward so it happens now or as soon as possible, not waiting until the houses are actually built and sold. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The second question is also from Mrs. Ruan, and it reads, below is the plan for saving money in parks and open spaces on which consultation is required. Reduce hours at key parks and remove some permanent staffing completely at specific parks. The work the permanent staff currently carry out will be done by mobile teams operating across the borough. Currently, one full-time member of staff works in the following parks: Bramall Park, Marple Memorial Park, Alexandra Park, Heaton Moor, Thornfield and Heaton Mersey Parks combined. Two full-time members of staff work in the following parks: Torkington Park, Bruntwood Park. The proposal is to remove two full-time members of staff, taking away one staff member from Marple Memorial Park and Torkington Park. This would mean that there will be one full-time member of staff in the following parks: Bramall Park, Alexandra Park, Heaton Moor, Thornfield and Heaton Mersey Park combined. Torkington Park, two full-time members of staff will remain at Bruntwood Park, Memorial Park. Then they will be covered by the mobile team. This will be made up of either one person or more than one person sharing the post. So the first part of the question is, why is no mention made of Reddish Vale Country Park, which at present has no members of staff, either full-time or part-time? This state of affairs is understood to be temporary because of the post which was vacated on 3 October 2015. And the second part of the question is, what is the status of Reddish Vale Country Park? Is it a key park or not?
Councillor Candler.
Thank you for the question, Mrs. Ruan. The reason that Reddish Vale Country Park is not mentioned is because there are no reductions proposed for that park. So that's the reason it wasn't mentioned. It's quite a simple thing. Yes, the key parks. Well, unfortunately, there's no particular importance attached to the word key. It was used in the business case to identify the fact that some parks could be affected and might well be affected. There's no separate category or class of key park, so there's no meaning to that word key.
Thank you. Next.
Chair, the questioners for the next 3 questions aren't present, so as is our usual procedure, a written response will be provided. Which brings us to Mr. O'Mara. Are you okay to ask a question? If you'd like to come forward to the microphone.
Thank you. Could I just say as well that we did, as market traders, put many questions to the scrutiny committee. So, yeah. The first question is: what systems will the council put in place regarding consultations with Stockport market traders over any proposed moves of the town's market? Who will administer the consultations, and who will evaluate the responses from any consultations?
Thank you. If you could just turn your microphone off. There we go. That's all right. Yeah. Councillor Macaulay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question, Mr. O'Mara. The Council, as you're aware, that the Council have already consulted with market traders about the proposed strategy. As part of the continuing engagement, we'll be looking at further options in the future for consultation. At present, the details about who will be doing what just aren't there, because again, what's been put forward tonight, and particularly in the discussions in the executive, we've been very clear, and across council groups actually, we're very clear that what's been put forward tonight is about a strategy. It's not about the implementation of that strategy, because a lot of those details still have to be worked out. But you can be assured that I'll put in writing in an email to Paul Lawrence, our head of service, that as soon as possible you need a timeline for consultation, and we'll get those details to you. There are, as I understand it, consultations being done with immediate effect, or hope to be done with immediate effect. I think there's been representations made to some traders to engage immediately to see if we can find them alternative venues within Stockport. But as I say, in terms of the broader consultation process, we will obviously get in touch with traders in due course, but for me that needs to happen as soon as possible.
Thank you. And your next question?
Yep. Can I just say the response to the question, and I wasn't very clear what Mr. McCauley was talking about. You said about negotiations, about traders moving, and very unclear on what the answer was that far, what it was about. I don't know.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, the response in terms of what consultations happen at the moment, Council's keen to work with a smaller representative group of traders with immediate effect to discuss potential relocation options. We look forward to hearing from those traders on this. But in terms of the actual consultation on the strategy and where we go forward with it and the implementation of that strategy, those details haven't been ironed out yet, because we're not sure what business cases are going to come forward and how the implementation of the strategy is going to take effect, because there's a number of options that we can look at, and there's still a lot of detail to be ironed out. But again, certainly from my point of view, what we need to do is be as transparent as possible, as quickly as possible with traders. So I'll certainly be contacting Paul Lawrence to make sure that we have a timeline for traders getting that information, and making sure that that information is transparent, and making sure that everyone has the opportunity to contribute to what will hopefully be a prosperous future for the marketplace.
The second question: will the council also have in place a separate detailed report on keeping the town's market in the marketplace? and improving it in its present location with the emphasis on a new start for Stockport Market.
Thank you. Councillor McCall.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, within the proposal, I mean, what the proposed strategy is about fundamentally moving the market. So we've gone through a process of where we've had a market improvement plan that's already been implemented. There has been progress been made with that, but we've taken the view and having looked at it in detail over the last 5 years about the interventions that have taken place and before Ports Pilot and the like, we've taken the view that in order to move the process on, moving the location of the market will be in the best interests of traders and in the best interests of shoppers in Stockport, and finding a new offer for that area is the way forward. As I say, because we're now, hopefully if we agree this strategy this evening, we'll then look at implementation and how that will transpire, then we'll have more meat on the bones in terms of where that moves forward. So it's not to say that we're not going to have we won't be looking at a separate strategy of doing everything that we can to keep the market there. What we'll be looking at is we'll be taking an objective view about what's in the best interests of the market and what's actually going to help growth within that area. And if it transpires that keeping the market there is in the best interest, then that is what we'll do. If it transpires that actually we can get more growth by it following what is proposed, then again that's something that we will pursue. Because I think, certainly everyone around this table, and I'm sure yourself will agree, what we need to do is make sure that we're generating growth in that part of the town. We're getting more traders back to that part of the town, and we're creating jobs and doing our best to make sure that people, not just across Greater Manchester, but the North West and beyond, get the Stockport experience, because we're a fantastic town. I think we're right in saying we're still the 4th happiest borough in the country, and people need to come here and experience that, because we're a great place to be, great place to live.
Do you want to seek any clarification? Or does that answer your question? Clearly, this is not the end of the conversation. There will be many more meetings, but in terms of your questions.
I think he answered it, because I think we should not just, the council shouldn't just focus down the one route, because it might not be the right route.
I think that message has been clearly heard, and the report's here. And thank you for your attendance tonight and at scrutiny. Thank you. Next question.
Yes, Chair. The next 2 questions are from Mr. Padfield. If you'd like to come forward.
Good evening. Thank you. My first question is, why is Stockport Metropolitan Borough Council supporting the devolution of power to Greater Manchester and a directly elected mayor, when the democratic vote of the people of Greater Manchester was against having a directly elected mayor? And additionally, how can so much power now be invested in the leader of SMBC as part of an unelected body, GMCA, when a particular individual receives so few votes in council elections, only 14% of the electorate in that election?
Thank you, Mr. Padfield. First of all, I need to correct one assumption or statement that you've made in there. There has never been a vote in Greater Manchester about a directly elected mayor. There was a vote within Salford City Borough Council as to whether or not they would have an executive elected mayor, which in fact the people of Salford voted yes, and so Salford is actually led by an executive mayor, Ian Stewart. There was a similar referendum held within the City of Manchester, not Greater Manchester, and Greater Manchester is much bigger than the City of Manchester Council, as we keep telling them. And the people of City of Manchester said no to the mayor. So actually there have been 2 referendums within Greater Manchester. One said yes, one said no. Both of those were for an executive mayor, where a great deal of the power and authority of the council actually rests in the hands of that individual. That is not the model that the GM mayor is following. It's what is technically known as a weak leader model. I don't mean it's the weak leadership, but the mayor can only make decisions with the approval of the 10 leaders of the councils, because it is the councils who will be delivering under the devolution, and the powers are coming from Westminster, not up from the bottom. In terms of my power, I am leader of this council. I was elected, obviously, only in one ward, as any councillor is, because we don't have an executive. So we don't have an executive mayor. I don't have the kind of powers that Ian Stewart has. I am answerable to the council. It's no overall control. So you could argue that members who were elected with a fairly wide mandate have approved my leadership, but I am answerable in a way that an executive mayor, for instance, and the London mayor model is not answerable to councils. But that is not the model that's being proposed for Greater Manchester. So, you know, it's an interesting debate, and we could go on for a long time, but I hope I've dealt with some of your question. But if you want a clarification, now's the chance.
I suppose the only clarification is, why are we not seeking, then, a democratic referendum on whether Greater Manchester does want a mayor? Why are we letting this be imposed from central government?
It's a perfectly reasonable question, Mr Padfield, but I suppose the question is, why do we have 40% of our children not school ready? Why do we have the poorest health outcomes in the country? Why do we have such a large number of people who are unemployed and have been generationally, let alone for most of their own lives? And do we believe that as local authorities, if we could get the control over the funding and the way in which those programmes are dealt with locally, we could do better as local authorities, elected as local authorities, as all the councillors are. And do we want to do that? And the price for getting hold of that from central government is to have a mayor. The problem is there are lots of different mayors. We have Councillor Vadai is the civic mayor for Stockport, and most councils have a civic mayor. Their role is to chair the meeting, and they can sign various papers, but they exercise no executive powers. There are executive mayors, such as Ian Stewart, and a few others around the country who hold enormous powers in their hands. And then there's the London mayor model, which is different again. So we use the same term, mayor, to cover a wide variety of issues. And if you were to ask me, would I vote for a mayor, it would depend on what type of mayor it was. So it would actually be a very complex referendum. What I am hopeful for is that by 2017, the people of Greater Manchester will have seen the benefit of their local council, in our case Stockport, but the other 9, their local council having gained some control over things which previously were done by Westminster and Whitehall to deliver better services to people, and they will engage with that mayoral, and I always have trouble with that word, election, because they will see it's worthwhile. Unlike, for instance, the police commissioners, where most people were perfectly aware of what the police do and have a view on policing issues, but did not engage with that election to any great extent. I think it's difficult to ask for people to vote for something when they don't know what it is. We've got the interim mayor, there is a real model there, and I hope that people will see the value. If they don't, and if people don't see the benefit, then they won't turn out, and we will be rightly answerable for that. But I think actually I'm more concerned with actually delivering better services than with a structural question. And I hope that's answered your question. I believe you've got a second question.
Yes, I have a second question, which is, I suppose, goes on to your second point. So in the plans that were outlined in the last meeting for the 2016-17 budget, the reduction in adult social care budget is predicated on a reorganisation of the system to enable a reduction in demand and more community involvement. But what will be the impact on service users and the NHS if this reorganisation does not achieve its targets? And in particular, I'm thinking relating to the comment that was in the Equality Impact Assessment, says that some specific proposals within the IIS programme involve service changes that may impact on specific groups within the borough. For example, impact of new commissioning models on people with a disability and older people. So what is going to be the impact on these people if the proposal is not successful?
Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr Badfield. Thank you for the question. As we've reported both here and in full council, the financial pressures facing Stockport and every other local authority, in particular next year but succeeding years, are absolutely unprecedented. The level of savings and therefore the range of changes to existing services that we will have to put in place are absolutely unprecedented. Now, that doesn't just apply to the local authority in Stockport. It also applies probably even more so to our health service colleagues in both Stepping Hill, Fan Ocean Trust and the clinical commissioning group who commission community services, GP services and things like that. So we are all public sector agencies involved in health and social care facing a problem of significant reductions in budgets and, from everything we can see, some elements of increasing demand. We are absolutely clear from both the local authority and from our health colleagues that the only way that we can respond effectively to these challenges are to put in place as effective as we can integrated social care and community health services. And we've made very good progress already in doing that. We've got the integrated locality hub work that we've again reported on. And this has been shown, the understanding of the commitment. Stockport is now identified as a vanguard site, the only one in Greater Manchester with a specific commitment to health and social care integration. So what we are doing is working very hard to put in place the right organisation across health and social care that can ensure that we can continue to support our most vulnerable clients right across the borough. And we are absolutely sure this is the right way to do it. And we know we've got a good track record, we've got absolute commitment from all agencies involved, and are making good progress. Your comment, what will be the impact on service users and the NHS if this reorganisation, change in structure does not take place? It will be much, much more difficult for the local authority and health agencies to deliver the services that we know are needed. Yes, there will be service changes that will impact on specific groups within the borough, but the way we're going about it is doing our very best to ensure that we will continue to support the most vulnerable individuals within our communities.
Are you happy that that's a clear answer?
I wouldn't say happy is the word there. Clear answer. Yes, thank you.
Yes, Chair, thank you. The final question is from Mrs Darlington. Sorry, and it says, item 6 of tonight's agenda states that there are 6 plots of land which have planning approval for housing development. Why do the Council's planning pages continue to show that the planning application, reference DC 056554, is still in the consultation period when the planning application was approved 9 months ago?
Thank you. Councillor Macaulay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the question. It was a good question. The answer to which is we've got a legal agreement, Section 106 agreement that we have to get signed that currently isn't signed. My initial response that was given from officers that it was hoped that this would be done in the immediate future, to which my response was, what does that mean? So that we hope to get it signed and completed within the next fortnight. It will be safer to say that it will be done within the next month, but obviously we'll be pushing for that to be done as soon as possible because we want to get this project off the ground as quick as we can.
Thank you. First of all, before we move on, my apologies. In my anxiety to get to public questions, I actually skipped over declarations of interest. Does anybody have a declaration of interest they wish to make? I'm not aware of any. Okay, thank you. So we are now back on the agenda. And the next item is exclusion of the public and the public interest test. And that's for item 10 for 2 reasons under Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act. Category 3, information relating to financial or business affairs. And Category 5, information in respect to which a claim of legally professional privilege could be maintained. However, all the confidential information is contained in the appendix, so as long as my colleagues promise me that they will not stray into material that is in the appendix, we will not actually have to ask anyone to leave. Can you promise? But we will formally move that exclusion. Thank you. At this point, there's been a request to move item 9 up the agenda. This is not normally a long meeting, unlike scrutiny where by the time a report gets to here, we know we have seen it many times and it has already been to scrutiny, so this does not tend to be a long meeting. But in order to accommodate those who have come for item 9, I'm happy to move it up. And that means we go to item 9, and that's Councillor Macaulay.
Thank you, Chair. As those people that are interested in the audience will be aware, this is about our proposed new strategy for the marketplace and underbanks. You will be aware that last year we put forward a proposal for a £7 million investment into the marketplace and underbanks, and we're now at a stage where we feel we need to make additional adjustments to the strategy that we had in place and try and make improvements to it. So the proposal that is before you today essentially is seeking to move the current offer within the market and find a new location for it, but also find a new offer for the market hall, produce hall. The report details the progress that's been made in terms of the Porters pilot and where that's gone. What the Porters pilot project has done has found us things that have acted as a catalyst for the area, so things that are generating footfall that we require within that area. And what the strategy that is within the report is aiming to do is build on that and utilise the things that have gained success and try and encourage growth, business growth from that. So obviously we've had a number of questions before, so I'm happy to take any more questions from the executive. It's been through scrutiny. I have to say it was an excellent scrutiny debate we had about the proposals that were put forward. I think, from my point of view, I think it is important that we need to reassure traders and consumers that it's absolutely vital that we're open and transparent about where we want to go with any concrete proposals that come forward and where money is going to be spent. And we have a robust debate about what the best is for the area, and make sure that consultation process not only happens, but happens in a timely manner and happens in a way that is genuinely inclusive. So I'm happy to take any questions from the executive. Thank you, Chair.
Is there any member of the executive with a question or comment? Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. A comment rather than a question. Firstly, I welcome this report. I think it's a very good report. Obviously, it covers quite a large number of areas. It's not just about the marketplace and the covered market itself. But clearly, having said that, the focus of, I think, the immediate future for the report is largely around the marketplace. And that clearly needs to be a focus of what we're discussing tonight, and quite rightly so. Over the last few years, I think the marketplace has come on in leaps and bounds, and I can certainly remember when I started in regeneration, which I think was 2011, walking through the market, and I walked through it this afternoon, and it's a very different place, and it looks fantastic, and I think a lot of credit should go to the traders for that, because clearly, you know, their game has been upped. It does look much better in all sorts of ways. But having said that, the footfall has not improved in line with that. I mean, the reality is the market is much quieter than we would like it to be, and I'm sure much quieter than traders would like it to be. So we have looked at what the options are. I think we've looked at what's working in other places, and the conclusion that I've certainly come to is that we could carry on trying to tinker with it. We could carry on trying to make incremental improvements and keep the market as it is now, but just make it a little bit different. Actually, I don't think that's the best way to go. I don't think that's the best thing for the market traders, simply because I don't think there's any evidence it would work, to be absolutely honest. I don't think it's the best thing for the town, because I think the market is a fantastic resource that we need to make the best of. So I am firmly of the view that we do need to find a new home for the existing market traders, indoor and outdoor, and that home should be in the heart of the shopping centre of the town, an area where there's higher footfall, an area where they can do more business. I think we need to, as a matter of urgency now, and I think Councillor McCall is absolutely right in saying there is an urgency now. Very understandably, market traders are uncertain, they're unsure of what's going to happen next, and we need to get rid of that uncertainty as best we can. And that's uncertainty about the new location, which I think the council needs to work with market traders to find a new location very quickly. Uncertainty about the package that we might put together to help market traders relocate and make sure the new location, wherever that might be, is a success. That needs to be sorted out, and we need to make sure we're properly supporting market traders in doing that. And, of course, in the way the new market, wherever it might be, is going to work. And I think the suggestion has been made that the new market might be run by the traders, owned by the traders, managed by them, rather than by the council. And I think that certainly is something that I think is a very positive suggestion. I think we should spend a lot of time exploring, and I think if it works, then go for it. My hope is that that would lead to the current market traders essentially being able to do more business. Being in an area where there is higher footfall, being an area where they can get more customers buying more things from them. At the same time, of course, the marketplace and the historic market hall is very important for Stockport, and I think we have an opportunity, if we are bold enough to take it, to find an offer which is going to pull more people into that market hall and into the location, to improve both the hall itself and the shops around the outside. I think it is a challenge, but it's certainly something that I've long wanted, to have a market that's open, if at all possible, in some capacity, doing something 7 days a week. I'd like you to be able, someone to go up to the market any day of the week and something is going on, whether that's a standard market or a special event or whatever it might be. And I think we have the opportunity to do that. So I think the challenge for the council now is very quickly to first work with traders, as Councillor Macaulay has outlined, and secondly to move forward on a business case for a new market offer, because it's very important with that. Something that was raised with me today, which I think is also a really good point, is there will be a transition phase. If you have a new market offer, the market will be refitted to some degree. While it is refitted, clearly at some point there will be nothing happening in the market itself, and we need to find a way to help the businesses around the market who might otherwise suffer, if essentially they're in a situation where for a period of several weeks or more there is just no market at all. So we do need to be very aware of that. So I do think this is the right thing for Stockport. I think it's the right thing for the existing market traders if we get it right, and that's a challenge to us. And I think it's the right thing for the marketplace, which does look fantastic now, and we just need to get the people there to actually appreciate it and to spend some money. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else before Councillor Macaulay sums up? Councillor Macaulay.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate Councillor Roberts' comments. I think I agree with certainly a lot of what he said, and certainly from conversations within the executive that we've had, we're all on the same page about that we need to do something to move forward. I think there's one point that I would like to pick up on that Councillor Roberts suggested. The comment about we could continue with the incremental change. I think the point is, one of the issues that was raised in scrutiny was one about risk and the risk to the traders. And I think the important thing to understand about continuing with a strategy of incremental change, which the Council obviously has engaged in, certainly over the last 4 years, is that it hasn't achieved the required growth that we need for that area, and the Council still needs to support the market. So my view that I expressed at the committee, and it remains my view, that the risk to the marketplace is greater by the status quo remaining, and not having as Councillor Roberts suggested, a bolder view of moving forward. I'd just like to reiterate that the important thing is that we bring the traders, not so much bring the traders with us, but as Councillor Roberts suggested, and as Councillor Corris suggested in the scrutiny committee meeting, that it's actually this should be trader led. It should be traders that buy into the idea and say, yeah, this is how we're going to make as much money as we possibly can. And how we're going to generate the jobs of the future in Stockport, and how we're going to grow the local economy. So this is very much about, and certainly again from my point of view, an inclusive approach to this change. But it is change, and by its very nature, it's going to be difficult. But as I say, there's a positive story to be had and a light at the end of the tunnel with this journey that we're going on.
Thank you. The recommendations are there, and as has been said, they have been through scrutiny, and they will be coming back to us because they're in principle if business plans come into existence. So are you happy to approve it on that basis? Thank you very much. That brings us back to the normal order of the agenda, and that brings us to land at Brinnington. I would have said in Brinnington. It's a joint report, but Councillor Roberts, perhaps if you want to start.
Thank you, Chair. I won't say a great deal on this because I think it's a procedural report. I mean, we've spent a great deal of time over the last year or two discussing the Brinnington Master Plan and the development, which I think is very positive for the community and the people of Brinnington, new houses, new leisure centre and so on. Members may be aware that that was all approved and it went through the Council. We were then taken to judicial review. A challenge as to whether that decision had been made correctly, and the courts decided it certainly had been made correctly, and backed up our view that we had done or gone about making the decision in the right way. So this is now moving this forward. It's about divesting ourselves of the land so that essentially that the house builders can get on and build the houses we want to see built as soon as possible in Brinnington. Thank you, Chair.
Do you wish to add to that, Councillor Macaulay, or are you happy?
I have nothing to add. It was a very nice, concise explanation from Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? This is one we've looked at on quite a number of previous occasions. Are you happy to agree the recommendations? Thank you very much. That takes us on to item 7, which is a SEMS A6 M60 Relief Road update, a fairly regular occurrence on our agenda. Councillor Candler.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I remember this report for pretty well all of the 20-odd years I've been on the Council. I remember it mainly as the A6M scheme, which was going to be a circular route or semicircular route around the south part of Greater Manchester, leading from the M60 to the airport. This report brings information on ongoing discussions with the Highways England about property which they have along the route of the road from what is now the A6 to Manchester Airport Relief Road up to the M60. At paragraph 3.4, you can see that the first stage of the process would be a desktop study to consider the previous overall business case and so forth. And stage 2 of the process would be the development of an outline business case. And you can see at paragraph 3.6 a set of reports that would be necessary for that process to take place. In the dying weeks of the coalition government, an amount of money was agreed by the government to be paid to the Strategic Authority in Greater Manchester to fund this process, but you'll see that in some of the comments that are made around the paragraph 3.7, we're going to really have to come up with a new justification. I'm slightly concerned about the language that's being used in parts of this report, which might mean that a whole new business case will have to be brought together against what might be thought to be a rather unfriendly financial background to all of this. So I'm a little bit concerned. However, there is the money there to conduct the consultations with Highways England, and I'm very hopeful that the process will unfold and lead to that connective route. The people who live in the part of Stockport affected by this, pretty well all of them expect that this road will be completed. The thought that it might not be, and you have traffic coming from all over the place, feeding its way through Bredbury, a little bit of Marple and into Hazel Grove onto what is going to be the A6 Manchester Airport Relief Road, is really quite daunting. So I'm very hopeful that this eventually will come to pass, but I'm not totally confident.
Thank you. As Councillor Candler says, it's a very familiar topic to us, but anyone got any questions or comments? Councillor Alexander.
Just one question. Is there a timeline for it?
I think it talks about 2040 at some point. I think at paragraph 4.3, 2040. So it's a pretty lengthy timeline, and none of us can know what the conditions will be at that stage. So it's a bit difficult to be precise.
Well, it's possible it will still be before the additional runway in London. But are you happy to agree the recommendations? Thank you. That also brings us to another report from Councillor Candler on the Transport Asset Management Strategy. Don't get too excited.
Like the previous report, Chair, this did go to scrutiny pretty well unremarked. It's a very long report, but it's an absolutely vital report. The Transport Asset Management Plan really will dictate how the Council uses its assets in support of all of its strategic aims and priorities. And it may well be that the extent to which we can manage our assets in this way will dictate the way in which Stockport can grow and improve and meet the challenges of the 21st century. So it's a long report talking about all the assets that we've got. There is an interesting point at paragraph 1.4 which says that the gross value of all the assets is 1.69 billion. I suppose that presupposes that they're all somehow wiped out in some kind of a catastrophe and have to be rebuilt. But so, anyway, it's an interesting point that the Transport Asset Management Strategy is really something which will encompass all the issues that may well arise in the next 20 or so years. It looks at all the assets we've got, the problems that we have with them, the extent to which we can afford to manage them and keep them in shape. The background to the report is that people's satisfaction, you can see at paragraph 3.8, public satisfaction with the condition and performance of the highway network has declined rapidly since 2009. I would attribute that to the fact that we have been starved of resources. That has been a political strategy that somebody has decided to go along with, but it's something we've got to consider. We've got to be able to manage all of those expectations from the public. It says in that same paragraph at a bullet point about 5 down, beyond the next spending review period, it's unlikely the central government will seek to engage directly with the local authority but in determining levels of funding for highways. So that means really that we're going to be up against it to get the money, but we will do so. We have taken the very bold step in Stockport of actually borrowing some money to invest in highways. That's one of the most far-sighted decisions that we have taken. So, as I said, it is an important report which determines how we will move forward, and I hope that you will approve the recommendations in the report.
Any questions or comments? As Councillor Campbell says, it is an important report because it provides the framework for going forward for the future. Happy to accept that? Thank you. We've done item 9, and that brings us to item 10. Can I remind members to be careful about the appendix information, but I'll call Councillor Candler to start. Sorry, not Councillor Candler, Councillor Roberts to start.
No, not this time.
Thank you, Chair. The former Tatton Cinema site in Gatley has long been a blight, I think it's fair to say, on the village, and long one of the key issues that residents have been keen to sort out. We brought forward the compulsory purchase order partly in the hope that it would force the hands of the developer in actually doing something, and partly so that if nothing did happen, we would have another route out and give ourselves every possible opportunity to actually make something happen with that site, given there are no certainties involved, but we want to give ourselves every chance we can. I am pleased that the owners of the site have now brought forward a planning application for the Tatton site, which is going through the system. However, I think that planning application, it remains to be seen how it's determined, and even if it is approved, we have had approved planning applications for that site before, after which nothing has happened. So a planning application in itself is not a guarantee of a satisfactory outcome. So part of the purpose of bringing forward the CPO to actually make something happen seems to be working, but we're very keen to make sure, to the belt and braces approach really, to make sure that if anything does happen and we don't end up with a development from the current owner by choice, that we have the opportunity to force it and to bring the site into council control and make sure that something does happen, because it has been since 2001 unused, and frankly it's far too long and we need to get it sorted, Chair.
Anything you'd wish to add, Councillor Macaulay?
Nothing to add apart from, I mean, this is a clear illustration that the council is determined to get development moving where we can, and I, happily support this report and the comments of Councillor Roberts.
Any other questions or comments, Councillor Holloway?
Just a brief comment, if I may, just to endorse everything that's already been said. Residents of Gatley, traders, everyone that they talk to, sooner or later raise the question of what is going to happen to the Tatton site. It's a crucial location within the village, and it really does need something to happen to it as soon as possible. We're delighted that the planning application has come forward, but we still need to keep pressure on the developer to ensure that things happen as quickly as possible.
In that case, are we all happy to approve the recommendations? Thank you very much. That brings us to item 11, Empowering Communities, Rent a Roof. Councillor Macaulay.
Thank you, Chair. As you're aware, Stockport has had, since the days of Councillor Bodsworth, had a tremendous record in renewable, its green agenda, if you like, both in recycling but also in solar power. Stockport Homes has been a huge part of ensuring that homes in Stockport are fitted with solar panels, and the scheme under the last government for getting to incentivise solar panels being put in was very successful in the borough. The proposal that's before you is essentially a report to request that we support a new financial model to take forward an increase in putting solar panels on more of our housing stock. The only amendment to the report that needs to be made is that because of changes in the government policy, the number of panels that we will likely be able to put in will be reduced. So essentially what we need to do is agree this and try and get as many solar panels put in as we possibly can. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions or comments? think technically it's a consultation, but we're all suspecting that the feed-in tariff will significantly reduce. So subject to that, so that the case is likely to be quite different, but the delegated powers there. Are you happy to approve those? Thank you. That brings us on to item 12, revised statement of community involvement. Councillor Macaulay.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to use Councillor Roberts' phrase. This is quite a boring techie report, I'm afraid. I've gone off again. But I mean, it is quite important. It is in line with what we were discussing earlier about consultation and how we consult on planning issues with local residents. It is likely that we will have to bring a further report back to the Executive in either December or early in the new year to look seriously about to take a broader view. What the proposal before you is essentially to keep in line with changes in legislation. So subject to another report coming to Executive in the turn of the year, I commend this report to the Executive.
Any questions or comments? It is in fact going to be discussed by the all-party local development framework working party tomorrow. Yes, Wednesday. So if there are any further comments, we can bring them back. But subject to that, you're happy to approve the recommendation? Thank you. Councillor Macaulay, homelessness report and discharge of homelessness duties.
Thank you, Chair. I know you get sick of the sound of my voice. I'll try and keep this brief. The homelessness report was a report that was this was a report that was requested from adult social care, as I remember it, and it's a report that discusses a pilot scheme to discharge homelessness duties to the private sector. Now, what this doesn't mean is it doesn't mean that we're privatising our homeless services. What essentially it means is it's an extra ribbon to the bow of work that Stockport Homes have already done, trying to increase the stock available to it in order to home some of our most vulnerable residents, and homeless people certainly come into that category. So the report recommends that we go with the pilot. It's important to say that this will only be a certain number or a certain cohort of people that will take part in this pilot. The thought process being that if it's a pilot that doesn't work, then we aren't putting vulnerable people in a situation that they'll find difficult to get out of. So I hope you're able to agree with the recommendations within the report, and we can push forward with this work.
Thank you, Councillor Macaulay. Anyone? Questions, comments? Happy to agree the pilot? Thank you very much. And then for a change of pace, item 14 is the Section 75 pooled fund agreement. It's a joint report. Have you decided between yourselves who's leading on it? Councillor Pansel.
Thanks, yeah. If I could just introduce it really by commenting on my expression and on behalf of myself and Councillor Holloway of views. The original Section 75 arrangements date from April 2009. I remember the 31st of March 2009 as we kind of got to the point of signing and agreeing in time for it to come into force. A large part of that pooling then was on learning disabilities, and there were some other more specialised things. But I think some people don't realise that we've now a 6.5-year history of pooled budgets, reflecting the fact that earlier there was great difficulty in getting pooling under the previous legislation. As we say in our comments, the pooling of budgets is now really the key mechanism to support integration between health and social care, and the Council and the Clinical Commissioning Group have set out our ambitions and agreed our ambitions to significantly increase the pooled funds in the future. I think, going back to one of the questions earlier, I think in the medium term we're looking for benefits in terms of shifting resources and so on, but without the pool we can't do that. It will take time, and I think along with all the other developments through Stockport together and our whole approach to integration, it's necessary to now recognise that the large increase in the money in the pool does require not only major changes to the agreement for 2016-17, but also in terms of the impact on the constitution and governance arrangements. And I think there was no disagreement, Chair, between executive members and scrutiny that this was absolutely necessary. And there's also a slight, not complication, but greater amounts to devolution as that becomes clearer what sums will be coming in and so on. So what we're proposing is that in time for the new financial year, there will be proposals for change drawn up by managers which can go through scrutiny and the executive. So it's an absolutely essential development in terms of the way forward on securing greater integration.
Anything to add, Councillor Holloway?
Very little. Just as Councillor Pantel said, I think certainly at adult care scrutiny there was a very good discussion recognising the importance of the whole pool budget process, but recognising that with the very significant amounts of money that we now have, certainly for next year, that we will have in place, the whole governance arrangements, how it links into other decision-making processes, both within the Council and with the CCG, is crucial that we strengthen those arrangements. So very happy to support the proposal.
Any other questions or comments? I can certainly say CRMG also was concerned about the governance. Not necessarily worried, but want to be kept informed. So happy to agree that? Right, that leads on to item 15, which is for me to nominate to you Councillor John Taylor to serve on the fostering panel for the rest of this municipal year. Happy to agree that and thank Councillor Taylor. Thank you.
Because sometimes people think the fostering panel is just about women. I think John Taylor, I think we must congratulate him.
For being a token man. Thank you. Item 16 is GMCA decisions, and like the pooling report perhaps relates back to an earlier question to some extent, because we do report the GMCA decisions to here. We do have a question time on our full council about GMCA matters, and we are working on how we can better integrate our scrutiny with GMCA. But they are reported to you here on a personal level as the leader on planning and housing. Pleased to see that the Housing Growth Fund, which was only formally launched on the 2nd of July, has already agreed in principle six projects. I'm hopeful in the future that the projects will have a greater variety in them. But some of these projects are very large. They will create jobs for those people involved in the construction industry. They will create much needed homes, particularly in the centre of the conurbation at the moment, although there is one in Oldham. So are you happy to note the decisions? Any questions? No? And then 17 is to consider any recommendations of scrutiny committees, and I'm not aware that there are any. No, Chair. And that brings to an end the meeting. Can I thank you for your attendance?